Hi, my name's Chris George. I'm the general manager of third-party free-to-play for Big Fish Games. And we are going to talk about Gummy Drop Success, the secret ingredient. Before we get to the secret ingredient, we're going to talk about a little bit about Big Fish Games. We'll go into some of the numbers behind Gummy Drop Success. We'll talk about 6 key ingredients that I feel like made a big difference to the game. We will obviously cover the secret ingredient. And then at the end, we'll talk about how to partner with Big Fish. So, a little bit about Big Fish Games. Obviously, we're known for our premium business, HOPA business in particular. We've actually distributed 2.5 billion games since we were founded in 2002. We got great franchises like Mystery Case Files, Grim Tales, Dark Parables. Last year, we introduced a new premium game for the Apple Watch, Android devices called Lifeline. That was pretty successful as well. And so premium is absolutely part of our DNA. With that said, Big Fish is absolutely focused on mobile free-to-play, and we've been actually launching games since 2012. Here's actually all of our games that we've ever launched. There's some games that are in soft launch now. Certainly there's some hits that you may have heard of, Big Fish Casino, Gummy Drop. But then there's also soft launch games that we launched. And I wanted to include them here because we learn from all the games we launch. Some games are going to be hits. Some games aren't going to make it. But we take all those learnings and take them and put them into our future games. So without further ado, let's talk about Gummy Drop. So let's see, a little background here. Gummy Drop was developed by Studio Game Forest. They're out of Vladivostok, Russia. Obviously published by Big Fish Games. It was soft launched back in June 2014. And back then, for the soft launch, when we first launched it, we actually saw pretty great KPIs from the start. There wasn't a lot of tweaking we had to do. Saw your typical 50% D1 retention, 30% D7, 20% D30. And so it was actually a pretty short launch, soft launch period. We went worldwide in September 2014. I am happy to report that 2.5 years later, the game is still going strong. We actually met the developer in Tokyo this last month, talked about new initiatives, new features. Really, we're excited about the opportunity in the game, even 2.5 years later. And it speaks to free-to-play games being less about launching and more about being a service that you constantly update. So you may be wondering, Gummy Drop Success, how do you define that? What makes this game a success? We could talk about user engagement. Players play 70 minutes per day on average. We could talk about the number of centuries that players play every single day if you take all the minutes combined times the DAU. But I'd actually like to talk about the top grossing charts. So right here we have the number of countries where Gummy Drop achieved top 100 ranking in the grossing charts. So we got 146 countries there. It's achieved top 10 in 124 countries. And when I say countries, it's either on Google Play, on iPhone, or iPad. Top 5 in 101 countries. And Gummy Drop has actually been #1 grossing in 38 countries to date. Let's see. Let's get to the recipe. So first and foremost, you absolutely need a world-class developer to get a hit game. It absolutely is fundamental, and it's why I mentioned it first. And Big Fish is great at what they do, but we don't really matter if we don't have a great developer behind the games we launch. So Studio Game Forest, talk a little bit about them. They've been making games since 2005. They've developed over 30 premium titles, including the Seven Wonders Match 3 franchise. They're passionate, they're determined, they're collaborative, they're absolutely creative. They're everything we look for in a developer. Little side note here, they're actually currently looking for a talented game designer. And so if you're interested, if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, please feel free to shoot them an email at studio@game-forest.com. So that's the first ingredient, world-class developer. Second ingredient is focus. So as a publisher, we like to allow developers to do what they do best, which is make great games. There's actually a lot of stuff that goes into making a hit game. Things like marketing, QA, production help, making sure the project's on track, engineering, analytics. And so we like to handle all that for the developer. And again, it allows them to really focus on what they do best. And in this case, it worked extremely well. So let's go to the third ingredient, installs. The greatest game ever is nothing without installs. And the greatest marketing team is nothing without a great game, right? I guarantee you that there are games on the App Store that are absolutely wonderful, have great retention, have great monetization, but for whatever reason, that publisher or that developer, they haven't been able to find the right players, and ultimately, that game is invisible. It really doesn't exist. It's invisible in the sea of the million apps that are out there, right? So you got to have a great game. But if you don't have a plan for getting installs, you really don't have a lot of hope here. Big Fish has great relationships with the platform teams to get featuring. Certainly we do cross-marketing. But we actually have an entire team dedicated to getting installs for our games. And Big Fish has actually paid for 20 million installs of Gummy Drop. And so you got to have a great game, absolutely, fundamental. But if you don't have a plan for installs, you're unlikely to get very much success. So let's talk about the fourth ingredient, communication. We talked about whether to include this side because it's kind of basic. Of course, you got to talk to your publisher. It doesn't seem that interesting, but I absolutely attribute tight communication to one of the key ingredients to Gummy Drop success. There is probably one day a week where we are not exchanging email with Studio Game Forest. We are in constant communication. And because we're on the opposite sides of the world, if communication is great, we can actually work almost 24 hours in a day. We get our job done. They then pick up where we left off, rinse and repeat. Communication is absolutely fundamental to the game's success. I would say also in-person visits, right? We've actually visited the dev, right around once a quarter since the game's been launched. It's a belief. It's a belief of Big Fish. It's a belief of our studio that constant, regular visits are fundamental to making sure that you're in alignment, making sure that you're eliminating any problems, and really there are certain things that you can only cover face-to-face. A Skype call, an email, there's just only so much you can do there, right? And so meeting face-to-face, getting in alignment, making sure that we're all on the same page has absolutely been part of Gummy Drop's success. So let's go to the fifth ingredient, content. Your very best players are the most avid players, probably your highest payers. they're going to consume your content voraciously, right? They can't get enough. And if you don't stay ahead of that, you're unlikely. We wouldn't be here today talking about the success of Gummy Drop. Staying ahead of the content train, making sure that your players have plenty of content at all times, is absolutely a key ingredient. So just to sort of talk about the content that the Gummy Drop developer has made, there's a new city release every 2 to 3 weeks. Each city has about 190 levels. There's almost 50 cities in the game right now. We're actually going to release our 50th city in March. Very excited about that. Should have some nice events in game for that celebration. And if you add it all up, there's over 9,000 levels in the game, and each level has 3 tiers of difficulty. Now, I want to point out it's not our, we didn't invent, we didn't want to get to 9,000 levels, right? Just for the heck of it. The only reason we have 9,000 levels is because our players require 9,000 levels. And so when you're thinking about making a hit game, have a plan for how you're going to deliver your content and make sure that you stay ahead of your most avid players. So let's talk about the 6th ingredient, which is the final ingredient before the secret ingredient. And that's all about luck. If a developer, publisher, if they're telling you that luck didn't play a role in their hit game, they're either naive or they don't fully comprehend the situation. There is absolutely a ton of stuff that we don't have any control over. We certainly want to do our best. We want to control as much as we can. But at the end of the day, the marketplace decides what's a hit and what isn't. And so we are very grateful and humbled by Gummy Drop's success, but we know luck played a role in it. Now, with that said, there's a gentleman by the name of Chris Sacca who said, "It may be lucky, but it's not an accident." And I absolutely believe this quote applies in Gummy Drop's case as well. We worked hard to get this success, right? There's a lot of people who were very experienced, made the right decisions collectively on both sides. We ended up having a wonderful project together. And, you know, we're going to absolutely say that luck played a role, but it wasn't an accident. So let's get to the secret ingredient. You might say, hey, Gummy Drop, developer, I talked about they made 30 games on premium. They're prolific. They know what they're doing. They go from premium to free to play. They make their first game and they make a lot of money, right? It actually didn't happen that way. You see, there was a game right before Gummy Drop that you've never heard of. That game is called Zombie, Zombie, Zombie. So a little bit about Zombie, Zombie, Zombie. We were super excited about the game, both the developer and us. Absolutely innovative. There has not been a game like it before or since. We were absolutely proud of the creation. We launched it in October 2013, actually got some pretty solid featuring, and it had over 500,000 installs in the first 2 months. Sounds great, right? Well, it didn't end up where we wanted it to be. It only made $38,000 in revenue. It only got 63 cents per download. We actually removed it from sale in May 2014, and Big Fish had over 6 figures of losses. So you might be saying, well, okay, you said you were going to talk about the secret ingredient. What does this have to do with Gummy Drop's success? Well, a great publisher-developer relationship is absolutely the key ingredient to Gummy Drop's success. There are publishers out there that would have taken those losses, that would have taken the financial failure of the game, and they would have said, you know what? These guys just don't have it. They don't understand free-to-play. they're just not going to get it. And so we should probably look elsewhere. That's absolutely not what we did. We immediately jumped to the next project. For Big Fish, publishing a free-to-play game isn't a transaction. We want to develop long-term relationships and grow together with our developers so that eventually we can make a hit game together. Free-to-play is pretty brutal. There are going to be way more failures than there are successes. And so we don't evaluate a developer on a specific game. We're actually looking at how they react to some of our questions. We're looking at how they respond when there's a deadline. We're looking at how creative they are at solving problems. And if we believe that we can make a hit game together, then we're going to make more games. And so Gummy Drop wouldn't be possible if we didn't have that philosophy. And in fact, not only are we continuing to develop and nurture Gummy Drop 2.5 years later, we're actually working with Studio Game Forest on 3 more games. 1 game's in soft launch, and we got 2 games in production. I don't know if any of those other games are going to be a hit, but I absolutely know the Studio Game Forest team, and I believe they have what it takes, and I like our chances. But if it doesn't work out, if it doesn't make a hit, we're going to be there to make another game with them. So with that said, come to my final slide, how you can work with Big Fish. We're looking for world-class developers, right? Ingredient number 1, mid-core casual content. We actually have a number of titles, casual games that are worldwide and in soft launch. Certainly Gummy drops a casual game, so we're excited about that. We actually have a couple mid-core games as well in soft launch. And we actually have a mid-core game, Dungeon Boss, that you may have heard of, that we're really excited about as well. You can contact publishing@bigfishgames.com, or there's people running around here with blue Big Fish t-shirts. Flag them down, and they'll be happy to talk to you. And with that...
Thank you very much. Right?